Welcome back, everyone. Our last agenda for today, we will join our second plenary speaker, Professor Dr. Ong Eng Tek from Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia. Professor Dr. Ong will deliver a speech entitled Inquiry Learning in Science, Research and Classroom Practice. For this session, I will pass the microphone to Mr. Ahmad Farid bin Abdul Fuad as the moderator for the session. The stage is yours, Mr. Farid.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Ms. Farah, for accompanying me this afternoon. On behalf of the ICSTEM 2021 cruise, I'd like to welcome all of you to ICSTEM 2021 again. We are now live virtually via WebEx at UMT and on air at UMT official, Facebook and UMT YouTube channel. It's the last session for today's conference. Still, I can guarantee it would not be the least after a day of fruitful and heightened session we have all enjoyed since this morning. I'm Ahmad Farid from STEM's Foundation Center, UMT. I'll be chairing this afternoon's plenary talk. We are honored to have our plenary speaker this afternoon. He is there with us right now, live from Sultan Idris Education University, UPSI. Let us welcome Professor Dr. Ong Eng Tek to the ICSTEM 2021. How are you, Prof. Ong?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, we are very glad to have you there for the plenary session this afternoon, Prof.
Thank you.
Before I pass the baton to Prof. Ong, let me briefly introduce our auspicious speaker of the day. Professor Ong earned his PhD in Science Education from Cambridge University, United Kingdom. Currently, he is the Professor of Science Education at Sultan Idris Education University, UPSI, and a member of the UPSI Senate. His research interests with numerous publications, including in areas such as science process skills, inquiry learning, cooperative learning, problem-based learning, concept cartoon, flipped classroom, indigenous people, education for sustainable development, ESD, STEM education, higher order thinking skills, HOTS, and HIV/AIDS preventive education. In short, ladies and gentlemen, Prof. Ong is the person well enough to deliver a plenary talk titled Inquiry Learning in Science, Research and Classroom Practice. Allow me to remind all of us, Prof. Ong will deliver his talk for about 30 minutes, maybe up to 4:50, and then we stop for QA session. And if time allows, Prof. Ong will entertain a question of two from the floor after the talk. So if any of us wish to pose a question to Prof. Ong, please do so by typing your question in the chat box during the talk, and we will go through them during the Q&A session later. I would like to call upon Professor Ong Eng Tek to deliver his plenary talk without further ado. Whenever you're ready, Prof. Ong, you may share your slides now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Farid, Ahmad Fuad, for your very kind introduction as the chairperson for this plenary session. Equally, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all our fellow conference participants to this session. The title of my presentation is Inquiry Learning in Science, Research and Classroom Practice. All right. Okay. Take a slide. Okay. All right. Okay. The outline of my presentation is as shown on the slide. Firstly, we will revisit the current scenario of science education in Malaysia as the introduction. And then secondly, the question on what inquiry learning is will be illuminated through different lenses, angles, and perspectives of science education. Thirdly, we will look at the benefits of inquiry learning as the outcome of employing this inquiry learning approach in our science classrooms. Fourthly, we will look at how inquiry learning episode could be implemented in our classroom. While there are many inquiry-based learning models such as 5E inquiry learning model, genre inquiry learning model, Suchman inquiry model, interactive inquiry model, project-based inquiry learning model, and we have IBSE model. We will, due to the time constraint, I will only share a lesson that employs the 5E inquiry learning model using the Malaysian curricular context. And finally, I will discuss the current research on the effectiveness of this model undertaken at Sultan Idris Education University. Now, I'm sure all of you, particularly among the Malaysian teachers, are familiar with the 60-40 policy that was instituted in 1967 and implemented in 1970. Now, basically, the 60-40 policy envisages that 60% of the Malaysian students will follow through the science and technical stream, while the remainder 40% will uptake arts and humanities subjects. This policy aims to realize our aspirations of becoming a developed and high-income nation by 2020, that was last year, which we, in retrospect, have failed to achieve, particularly in meeting the crucial needs of approximately 500,000 of scientists and engineers by 2020 in Malaysia, based on the projections of the National Council for Scientific Research and Development. Now, despite the priority given to STEM, the current statistics indicate that only about 45% of students graduated from the upper secondary schools were from the science stream, including the technical and vocational programs. The non-achievement was in part attributed to the waning interest in STEM among the Malaysian students. It has been reported that in the press that our students are avoiding STEM-based subjects. Why is it so? Even in a university, in our local university, where we have a vice chancellor who laments about the difficulty of filling places for science courses in his university. Now, besides, a parent has reportedly claimed that her daughter dislikes science stream because the teaching of science these days is dry and uninteresting. Now, the waning interest in science is due to a variety of reasons as students journey through their education. Firstly, is the inconsistent quality of teaching and learning, where it is characterized, among others, by the teacher-centered one-way didactic teaching. And besides that, we have very less hands-on or practical science, but so much hands-on note copying, which I call it note copying syndrome. Now, when I was with Jemaah Nazir Sekolah, which is the school inspectorate of the Ministry of Education, I remember going to a school and observe a science classroom. And I was sitting at the back, and there was a student right in front of me. And I asked him whether he liked science or not. And he says, "No, sir, I just hate science. I do not love science." And when I asked for the reasons why he didn't like science, he says that when he enters the science classrooms, every day he has got to copy notes and copy notes and copy notes. So the science lessons is prevalent with the note copying syndrome. That's what I'm trying to argue. Secondly, even we have what we call practical work or supposedly investigative activities. If you look at the science textbooks or the science activity book, these activities are mainly what I call cookbook recipe type of experiments, where there is hands-on, but with no emphasis on minds-on, let alone hearts-on, because every step is given to the student. It is just like the recipe book, you just you have to timbang jisim seketul batu, record, and then tuang 50 milliliter air and things like that. You see, it is so prescriptive. Everything is given to the student. So I would consider this as like a cookbook recipe. Now, secondly, we have content heavy curriculum? Well, one of the reasons from the Ministry of Education is a very implicit reason, is that we should try to teach as much content as possible so that in future our year 4 students could participate in teams, which is an international maths and science study for grades 4, 8, and 12. Currently, Malaysia only participates in grade 8 category. Now, mind you, we have lots of, if you look at the content, they cover lots of things. For example, if you look at year 6 science, which will be implemented in 2022, this is the new syllabus, which will be implemented in 2022, which is next year. And you could see that there are 13 topics to be covered, and which subsume under 5 different themes. They will be studying about scientific skills, human, microorganism, interaction among living things, and so on and so forth. You know, there are so much to cover. And remember, heavy content coverage might lead to meaningless memorization and regurgitation of scientific facts, which has been deemed to be not a healthy part of a balanced scholastic diet. And next, we have a perceived difficulty of STEM. At the age of 10 to 12, research indicates that science in children's mind was associated with difficult words, monsters, precious metals, and jewels, and also that science was unsafe. Now, a survey of 1,000 students by Royal Institutions, L'Oreal Young Scientist Center, found that half of the students find science, mathematics to be very difficult. Now, fourthly, we see that students see less relevance of science to the real world. Now, a poll of 4,000 UK students aged 9 to 14 found that nearly half of the students did not know that they would need a science background in order to pursue a career in plastic surgery. 4 in 10 did not know that they needed to study science in order to be a pharmacist, and more than a quarter failed to recognize they needed to study science subjects to be an astronaut.
Jangan cakap botol.
Hello? Is that okay? The analysis of the Malaysian science curriculum guides and syllabuses across grades and levels indicates that inquiry has been strongly advocated. Now, for example, in the science syllabuses for the primary school, from year 1, we have year 2, year 3, and so on until year 6, a special team on inquiry in science has been allocated for, and it aims to cultivate the higher order thinking skills among the children, and HOTS are among the 21st century skills, as succinctly stated in the preface of the syllabuses. For example, in the preface, it says that in ensuring the success of primary school standard curriculum, the teaching and learning of teachers should place emphasis on higher order thinking skills by focusing on the inquiry-based learning approach. So all required skills to survive in the 21st century could be mastered by students. So we have inquiry approach being advocated for in the syllabuses of the primary schools as well as the secondary schools. Now, such an emphasis on inquiry learning is in step with the direction of science curriculum in other countries, such as France, that is famously known as La Main à la Page program. They are famous for this program. And in Denmark, we have ICSTEM, which stands for Assess Inquiry in Science, Technology, and Mathematics Education. While in the United Kingdom, they have the program on strategies for assessment of inquiry learning in science, short form as SAILS. And in the European Union, they have what we call Fabonici project, that is inquiry in science that subsumes under this project. And they have published lots of publications on learning through inquiry. Now, when talk about inquiry learning, the notion of inquiry learning is still nebulous, is still vague, is still inadequately and ill-defined among the science teachers. Nebulous because the term inquiry is subjected to different interpretations and practices, causing widespread confusions among the science teachers and the science teacher educators. Therefore, it is unsurprisingly that Sedlich asserts that the term inquiry is one of the most confounding terms within science education. And many science teachers are confused as to what inquiry is, how to implement it, and how well it works. And it was concluded that it's little wonder that inquiry has not become more common in today's classroom, signifying much less than expected implementation of inquiry-based teaching in the classroom among the science teachers. And we have Ansbury and Morgan define inquiry as an approach to learning that involves exploring the world, that leads to asking questions, testing ideas, making discoveries in the search for understanding. Meanwhile, Sincera summarizes inquiry learning as being interpreted as holistic, student-centered approach to science education in which pupils follow a procedure similar to that of real scientists. For example, they formulate their research questions and hypotheses, plan their research, collect, analyze, interpret data, and finally present what they have found. Meanwhile, the National Research Council defines inquiry as a multifaceted activities that involves making observations, posing questions, examining books and other sources of information to see what is already known, planning investigations, reviewing what is already known in light of experimental evidence, using tools to gather, analyze and interpret data, proposing answers, explanations and predictions, and communicating the results. Inquiry requires identification of assumptions, use of critical and logical thinking, and consideration of alternative explanations. Now, in the Malaysian science syllabuses, inquiry in general means finding information, questioning, and investigating a phenomenon that occurs. Discovery constitutes the key characteristics of inquiry. So therefore, accordingly, we know that inquiry learning allows students' questions and curiosities to take the front seat. And based on students' questions, inquiry teaching supports opportunity for students to gather information through applying the human senses, which are seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, and with the help of scientific instrumentation. Uh, all right. And finally, inquiry encourages students to question, conduct research for genuine reasons, and make discoveries on their own. Now, therefore, the practice of inquiry learning transforms the teacher's role from sage on the stage, where the teacher is a central figure who possesses the knowledge and transfer the knowledge to the student, who simply memorize and transmitted information and later reproduce it in an exam, often without even thinking about it, to guide on the side, where the teacher facilitates the learning in a less directive way. In other words, inquiry learning honors previous experience and knowledge, making use of multiple ways of knowing and taking on new perspectives when exploring issues, content, and questions. Hence, on the basis of these definitions, it can be surmised that science inquiry starts from the observation and exploration of a phenomenon, event, or object that raises questions, leading to inference, which provides tentative explanation based on previously acquired knowledge, and subsequently the formulation of a hypothesis which proposes a testable solution or an expected outcome. This hypothesis leads to an investigations which may or may not involve experimentation, which may not involve experimentation, such as the case of relative movement of the moon and planets, which involve mainly observations, in order to test them. Now, the testing entails the collection, analysis, and interpretation of the data to provide evidence in relation to the questions raised and hypotheses being tested. Upon testing the hypothesis, a conclusion is drawn, which adds to the knowledge and understanding of the phenomenon, event, or object. Next, we move on to one definition by what we call Benchy and Bell. In the article published in Science and Children, Benchy and Bell pointed out that many science teachers have misconceptions that in the inquiry-oriented learning, students need to be engaged in designing scientific investigations from scratch and carrying them out on their own. Instead, they opine that most students, regardless of age, need extensive practice to develop their inquiry abilities and understanding to a point where they can conduct their own investigation from the start to finish. Hence, teachers should focus on how much information need to be provided to their students and how much guidance need to be provided by the teachers. Accordingly, a 4-level continuum inquiry learning was conceptualized by them, and it depends on how much information are provided to the students and guidance by the teachers in terms of questions, procedures, and solution. Now, the 4 levels of inquiry are confirmation inquiry, structured inquiry, guided inquiry, and open inquiry. Now, this table helps teachers to have a better understanding of the 4 levels of inquiry along the proposed continuum. Now, if you talk about confirmation inquiry, now students confirm a principle through an activity where questions, procedure, and also the results or the solution are known in advance. Whereas in structured inquiry, students investigate teacher presented a question through a teacher prescribed procedure. However, solutions is not given. Whereas in guided inquiry, students investigate a teacher presented question using their own what we call self-designed or perhaps self-selected procedures to find out the final solution. And finally, for open inquiry, we are talking about students investigate their own formulated question and through self-designed or perhaps self-selected procedures to find out the final solution. Okay, then we move on to why do we use inquiry? Now, inquiry teaching is in step with the contemporary views on construction of knowledge through active participation rather than passive activity of acquiring ready-made ideas and skills. It is therefore an active approach to learning, and students construct knowledge through hands-on, minds-on, hearts-on learning activities. And then we have inquiry teaching supports the development of scientific theory in terms of acquiring general understanding of scientific ideas and the nature of science that is needed by every citizen in making informed decisions about science-based issues. Now, particularly during this coronavirus pandemic, the decision whether or not to take the COVID vaccine is based on our scientific literacy in terms of knowledge on vaccine and its prevention of diseases, not on the non-scientific or irresponsible hearsay. Thirdly, we have inquiry approaches help students to acquire 21st century skills in reasoning and critical thinking. Research by Greenwald and Quintadamo found that students who were taught using inquiry-based methods made a gain of 2.5 times greater in thinking skills than their counterparts who were taught using the conventional methods. Okay, so hence inquiry inculcates among students the critical thinking skills needed for the 21st century. And inquiry-based learning removes the resistance behavior such as not participating and or not showing interest in the lessons and promotes among the students the ability to think like a scientist. Hence, the inquiry learning promotes a better interest and attitudes towards science and inculcate thinking like a scientist. Fifth, we have the inquiry learning. Teaching helps to inculcate lifelong development of lifelong development of new skills and knowledge in an increasingly technological, scientific, and changing world. And using scientific-based science education, inquiry-based science education methods has been shown to have a positive impact on students' attainment with an even stronger impact on students' students with lower levels of self-confidence and those from disadvantaged background. Now, additionally, inquiry-based learning is a foundation and building block for grounding STEM education program in science practices. And also, we have students construct their own understanding based on the activities with the help of the science teacher. Hence, the understanding constructed is more meaningful and long-lasting. And finally, we move on to the benefits given by Jerome Bruner, who propounded the discovery learning, which is a technique of inquiry learning, and that he says that there are 4 benefits deriving from inquiry discovery learning, which are an increase in intellectual potency, where students are aroused by expectancy and hence devise ways of searching for regularities and relationships in his environment. 2, the shift from extrinsic to intrinsic reward, where students are freed from the immediate control of environmental rewards and punishment and of giving back the right answers. Instead, the students approach learning as a discovery process with the autonomy of self-reward, or more appropriately, by reward that is discovery itself. And then we have learning the heuristics of discovery, where students find out what was not known instead of learning about the known by improving in the art and technique of inquiry by means of engaging inquiry. And finally, it is an aid to memory processing, or in other words, conservation of memory. Next, we move on to the ways in which we can implement inquiry learning in our science classroom. Now, what are the available research-based inquiry learning models? There are many models. We have 5E inquiry learning models. We have general inquiry learning model. We have Suchman inquiry learning model, interactive learning inquiry model. These are all research-based inquiry learning model, project-based inquiry learning model, IBSE model, and there are a few more other models. However, due to the time constraint, we will only discuss the 5E inquiry learning model. Now, this figure shows that the 5E inquiry learning model that consists of 5 phases, namely engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Now, while this model shows as though the 5E inquiry model is a linear process, many educators are against it, and they propose that it should be iterative. Iterative in the sense that, like this, iterative in the sense that the evaluation piece is right in the middle, meaning every single one of these phases should have some type of evaluation that goes along with it. If you look at the sample of amount of time that could be spent on each one, for example, engage, explore, explain, and they go back to evaluate, then explore, explain, and then evaluate, extend, and then evaluate. So evaluate is the central piece, and it shouldn't be that what we call linear in that sense. It should be iterative. All right. Now, what are these 4 phases? 5 phases. Firstly, the engagement. The engagement phase aims to promote students' curiosity, to elicit students' prior knowledge so that they are engaged in and thinking about the new concept by providing them with short activities. And these activities assist in making connections between the previous and present experiences of learning, eliciting pre-instructional understanding and organizing students post-instructional understanding from the beginning, from the learning activities. For example, we could begin the engagement by maybe like teacher demonstration. We can use videos or perhaps film strip to actually get students' attention, or perhaps we can even use predictions worksheets where we ask students to predict what it would be and the reasons for their predictions. And then, by having the predictions, so students will see that they are actually having different predictions, and they will actually look at the science teachers. Now, what is the answer? They are curious. So here we are, by having students to predict, we are actually, getting their curiosity towards the science phenomena. And then we have explorations, and the exploration phase provides students with similar or common activities or experiences so that their conceptual change could be facilitated, in which students' current or pre-instructional understanding and skills are meaningfully restructured. The students may conduct lab activities that help them use pre-instructional understanding of views to explore questions, to generate hypotheses, and conduct a scientific investigation. Can you remember in the engagement phase, they have predicted, but now in the exploration phase, they could conduct the experiment to see to what extent their prediction was correct. And then on to explanation phase, where students' attention is focused on a particular aspect of the activities carried out during the engagement and exploration phases. It also provides opportunity for students to demonstrate their restructured views and understanding, process skills or behaviors. Besides, teachers may also directly introduce a concept or skills. Students explicate and demonstrate their conceptual understanding given in the textbook or curriculum should guide students toward a better and meaningful understanding. And fourthly, we have elaboration, where this stage is characterized by the applications and extension of the concepts learned and skills acquired through conducting new, novel, and additional activity. The elaboration stage helps students to develop a thorough and meaningful understanding of the newly acquired concepts and skills. And then we have evaluation phase, where it assesses students' understanding and acquired skills. It also provides teacher with the opportunity to evaluate the extent to which their students have mastered or achieved the learning standards. Now, let's move on to how it could be applied in a primary science lesson, which has been carried out by my postgraduate students, and it has been found to be very effective in helping students to construct their understanding on magnets. All right, it's from the physical science on magnet. So in engagement phase, what we did was a teacher demonstrated the magnetism by hiding a magnet in his pocket, and then bringing a metal object, for example, a pair of scissors, to the outside of the pocket, and then remove your hand and let the scissors remain stuck. Now, in pairs, students discuss what happened. And then we have predicting activity, where teachers allows the following materials. Teacher shows the following material, and using a prediction worksheets, and students are working in pair. Students predict which material will be attracted to a magnet and which materials will not be attracted to a magnet by completing my prediction column. This is what we call the prediction worksheets. Okay. Okay, and then for example, this is from the science textbooks. We have ice cream sticks, plastic button, and so on. And then students go on in the next phase, explorations phase. Firstly, we have teacher demonstration, where teacher shows how we can test whether a material is attracted or not to a magnet, reminding students about fair testing, and also then move on to student investigation, where students conduct an investigation in pair to check whether or not each listed material is attracted by a magnet. And then finally, students write the result in my testing column in the prediction and testing worksheet. Then in the explanation phase, where a teacher prompts to inductive approach, whereby students divide or sort out or even classify the materials into two groups. One are the magnetic materials which are attracted by the magnet, and the other one is the non-magnetic materials. And then in each group of materials, students identify what those materials are made of. And finally, students make generalization. In Malay, we call pengitlakan. Students make a generalization about the type of materials attracted by a magnet. For example, they could make a generalization that magnets can attract materials made of iron and steel, and other metals like copper, gold, and so on are not attracted to magnets. Now, finally, fourthly, we have invention. in groups of 4, students design and build train coaches, carriages, given the following sets of materials. And finally, we have evaluation phase. We can actually do it by having a short quiz or a test or even a prediction worksheet. Now we can give a new set of materials. Students make final generalization that magnets attracts materials made of iron and steel. Okay, now the use of 5E inquiry learning model is indeed effective in boosting students' what you call students' understanding and achievement, and also attitudes towards science. However, research indicates that science teachers self-perceive that while they have some knowledge and skills in inquiry learning, they are not competent in enacting an inquiry learning science lesson. Hence, the need of a module or guidebook specifically on inquiry learning in science. Well, this article, the first one on the effectiveness of a professional development program on the use of STEM-based 5 inquiry learning model for science teachers in China. This article reports the effectiveness of professional development program for pre and in-service science teachers in China on the use of STEM-based 5E inquiry learning model in enhancing the learning of 5E, what you call STEM-based inquiry learning model, using the topic on electric circuit in the context as a context of the study. The results indicate that the knowledge and application of STEM-based 5 inquiry learning model were statistically significantly increased as the outcome of the professional development program. And subsequent articles, we have the which report on the effectiveness of 5E learning model as compared to the conventional method in enhancing students' achievement in science and also in and their attitudes. And these two articles were written by my PhD and a master student. And these are actually articles reporting on need analysis study, which the first article it was found that even though the primary school science teachers self-reported that they have knowledge and skills on the inquiry learning, uh, uh, they have the knowledge and skills in inquiry learning, but then they still acknowledge a pressing need for a module on 5 inquiry learning model. And the one by Zaina, this was done, was distributed, a questionnaire was distributed to primary and secondary expert science teachers. And the finding indicates that science teachers self-perceive a fundamental need for coaching on the use of 5E inquiry learning model. I think I would not go further. I think due to time constraint, I would end here. Thank you so much for for listening to my talk. Okay. Mr. Farid?
Okay, thank you very much,
Okay.
Prof. Ong, for the enlightening explanation on inquiry learning. I think there's quite a lot of questions there actually waiting for you. May I read some of the questions to you now, Prof? Maybe you can answer some of them. Yeah.
I think due to the time constraint, perhaps you read perhaps one or two questions. You
Yes.
just read one question first, and then I'll answer one by one.
Okay, Prof. Yeah. So I have this one question. I think is rather current and rather important to the situation that we have right now, which is a COVID-19 pandemic. So how can the question from Mr. Ahmad Fuad bin Ibrahim is asking you on how can we implement the inquiry method during the COVID-19 pandemic to our students? I think it's referring to the PDPR that currently the student is
All right.
experiencing.
Okay.
Do you have the specific activity, for example? Yes, Prof. Ong, the question.
Yes. Thank you for this. This is very interesting, and yeah, we have actually done it before. Uh, because I was teaching a course on inquiry learning in science at the master's level, and I have primary school science teachers, which they actually plan. You see, remember that we are not able to supply them with we are not able to supply them with the materials and the apparatus and the materials. But then remember, we can actually tell students in advance, or we can actually contact their parents. You can actually contact the students to liaise with their parents to actually prepare the things that they need. You see, I have many students in my class, in fact, all of them, yeah, they have actually carried out PDPR on inquiry science learning. It is a primary school context. Actually, they have actually run the inquiry on like stability, and the other one on I think acid and alkali, um, using PDPR, right? I have the perhaps I could actually, if you write to me, I could actually connect you to them if you would like to see their what you call their lesson plans on how they actually carried it out in PDPR. Yeah, because for time being, the teachers are having the mindset that the students should come to the science classroom or the science or the science Mount Science, the science lab or the village science, the science room where everything has been prepared for them. But in PDPR, in this pandemic, you know that we are not able to have the face-to-face teaching, so it will be done through PDPR. So teachers can actually list out the things that you want the students to prepare, right? Like for example, the magnet. Yeah, for example, for the magnet thing, if the students were to come to our science lab, maybe things have been prepared, but in PDPR, we tell the students, can you please, prepare some pins, maybe buttons, prepare this, like the list that which are in the science textbooks. You can actually ask them to refer to the science textbook and can you prepare these 10 materials? We need this during our class. So when you talk and when you perhaps like the magnet, yeah, we cannot send it to them. Perhaps you can actually tell the students to go to the DIY, do it yourself, DIY shops to actually get a bar of magnets or maybe 2 bars of magnets. So yeah, students need to do something here. All right. If you were to think that teachers have to supply everything, then your inquiry learning will not work. As you teach them online, what you can do is that you can tell them what to do step by steps. You see, you can tell, okay, can you predict first which are the materials that could be attracted, which are the material that couldn't be attracted, and then in the PDPR, you can actually ask that, okay, who says this will be attracted? Can you just raise your hand, so that they could actually see one another. Oh, you think it will be attracted? Oh, you think that will not be attracted? By having, don't think that it is a waste of time. It is very important to uncover students' existing ideas, because research has shown that if you uncover students' ideas, and then students can actually see there is a multiplicity of ideas, there's a wide variety of ideas. Oh, you think it will? I think it will not. So now, teacher, who is right? Then we move on to the, exploration activity where you actually tell them what to do, right? And then they will be very eager to see whether their prediction was correct or wrong. So it can be done through PDPR. Yeah, it's something new, and that will be a good lessons to be shared in conferences. Yeah, I have students who actually done it, and I have marked their work, and they actually did it beautifully. I also told them to actually write down what their problems are, and yes, some of them, the problems is quite common. Some of them, maybe because of financial difficulties, they are not able to, but I think for science materials at primary level, it should be very simple. It should be, should be able to get it in everyday life. Yeah, I think that should be. I think I better stop here, or else I'll go on and on. Yeah. So could I have the next question, please?
Okay, Prof. Ong, I think the time is about 5 o'clock up already. I think your answers given just now is encapsulating all the other questions. Really asking you about the implementation of inquiry-based learning. And of course, as the questions come from Mr. Fuad, it's actually very current. And I think the answers really answering any questions that come from the chat box. Thank you very much to Prof. Ong, okay, for having sharing for this afternoon, and of course to all those who have already posted questions. Okay, thank you very much. If you need to contact personally Prof. Ong and really inquire some of the information that you need, please do so later on after the conference. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Prof. Ong, for such an enlightening talk. Okay, in a rather short of time, but we learned so many things actually about the inquiry-based learning, especially to us teachers. Okay, so we would definitely be benefited from your sharings. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to Professor Dr. Ong Eng Tek from UPSI and to all of us for audiencing the plenary talk this afternoon. With that, I close this plenary session with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day. Back to you, Ms. Farah.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ong, for the very informative speech. With Professor Dr. Ong here with us today, let us all cherish the moment by taking photos together. All guests are invited to switch on your camera for a photography session. In count of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Before we end our program for today, I would like to remind all the participants for tomorrow's event. Our program will begin with the second keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Valerie Ackerson at 8:15. For your information, we display the posters in our ICSTEM website for your perusal. With that, I hope everyone has enjoyed today's conference and we will meet again tomorrow. Thank you everyone for today and Assalamualaikum.